Forget the rule book, get people out. It's a disturbing charge that Grenfell fire crews were more concerned with tick-box rules than saving lives. Our investigation proves otherwise. Shortly before they began ascending Grenfell Tower, up the only, perilously narrow, flight of stairs in the blazing building, members of London Fire Brigade observed an unwritten protocol reserved for the most dire emergencies. They wrote their names on the side of their helmets. There is only one reason a firefighter ever does this, for identification purposes in case the unthinkable happens, which, in the early hours of June 14 last year, was a frighteningly real possibility. I thought I might not be coming out, a fireman on duty that night explained without exaggeration or bravado. During my 13 years with the service, I've never had to sign my helmet before. Never. The haunting image of crews, with breathing masks and oxygen cylinders strapped to their backs, trooping into the inferno with their yellow helmets bearing their names, Mick, Pete, Gary, is an answer to those who, in recent weeks, may have been questioning their quiet, unheralded courage that night. Theirs is a story which has been all but forgotten, dismissed, even, especially now, when the brigade's policy of asking people to remain in their flats was blamed at the public inquiry into the disaster for the terrible loss of life. Behind the 72 deaths are heartbreaking and harrowing personal tragedies: the man who lost 6 members of his family, the wife whose husband jumped from the 23rd floor, the father grieving the loss of his 5-year-old son, and the parents who lost their unborn child because of the delay in getting out, all victims, we are told, of the controversial stay put advice. Under such a tragic backdrop, it is perhaps understandable that our once unshakable faith in our fire service should be challenged. But the furor over the controversial stay put policy has resulted in what the Fire Brigade's union believes is unfair criticism of its rank-and-file members. General Secretary Matrack said firefighters who were clapped and cheered by the Grenfell community as they returned to their stations are now facing trial by media, which is both disgraceful and heartbreaking. Armchair critics, he called them. One was Andrew O'Hagan, who spent 10 months investigating the Grenfell catastrophe for an excoriating report for the London Review of Books, and said it was not a great night for the fire service when he was interviewed on Radio 4's Today program. Sarah Baxter, deputy editor of the Sunday Times, was also singled out. Why, she wrote, didn't the emergency services save more lives? Why did the Jobsworths in the fire brigade stick to the rigid demands of bureaucratic protocol when it was obvious that the flames were raging out of control? Before reminding us more than 300 New York fire crew died during the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers. Do you have to die to be a hero? One of the firemen we spoke to this week asked rhetorically. His sense of injustice is shared by many in the London Fire Brigade, who feel they have been hung out to dry over Grenfell. Parallels have been drawn between Grenfell and the Manchester Arena bombing last May, where, it has now been revealed, fire crew were held back by risk-averse officers in case a terrorist gunman remained on the loose. Bureaucratic protocols, in other words, came before saving lives. But what has emerged from our inquiries into Grenfell over the course of the past few weeks, is a dramatically different narrative. The rules were broken at Grenfell, in order to save lives, said one of the firemen who met us. His version of events is backed up by others. The fireman, one of a number we spoke to, asked to remain anonymous because members of the London Fire Brigade have been instructed not to speak to the press. They fear being disciplined and even losing their jobs if they dare to speak out. He is a husband and father in his 40s who has to do a second job to supplement his £2,000 a month take-home pay as a fireman. Bear that in mind when you read what follows. The rules, which prevented firefighters entering Manchester Arena for 2 hours, are contained in the Home Office's operational guidance for the Fire and Rescue Service. Under those same rules, fire crew should not have even gone into Grenfell Tower because, according to a risk assessment carried out after the blaze started that night, it was in danger of collapsing. Firefighters were officially informed of this by Danny Cotton, the female commissioner of the London Fire Brigade, who addressed staff at the scene, in North Kensington, London, at the height of the unfolding tragedy. "Go in and get people out," she told them. "Forget protocol. Forget the rulebook." But, crucially, she also admitted that she couldn't order them to go into the building. It was up to each individual fireman to make his own decision in those circumstances. All of the firefighters gathered around her, that's more than 200 men and women, went in. So there are no similarities, in this respect, between Grenfell and Manchester. The health and safety protocols might have been the same, but they were interpreted very differently by the two respective brigades. According to the rules, firefighters should have come back out of Grenfell Tower when radio communication broke down almost immediately after the fire started.